Hey, and welcome to this video. I found somewhere in my internet browsing, which can go many places, but I found this article, and it's talking about how this. I'm not sure if she's a therapist or a coach. Her name is Reem Raouda. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Probably not. Um, but it's a study of 200 kids that have high emotional intelligence and seven things that parents can do early on. And I don't even know if I read the article completely from start to finish, to be honest. I didn't necessarily want that to color these videos because as soon as I saw it and I saw the seven things that parents can do, I was like, yes, I totally agree with this. And I wanted to not necessarily skew that. Maybe I would go back and read it afterwards. Um, and so I want to make some short videos here, one for each point. But I wanted to start by talking about why is it important that we raise emotionally aware or, with high emotional intelligence? And what is, emotional intelligence? The way I see emotional intelligence, and I think it's really one of the key things that sets us apart in the world today. We look at even the job market. Yeah, you need the technical skills if you're in the technical field, or you need the understanding of whatever field you're in, right? And if it's a scientific field, a technical field, you're going to need those skills. But often, what sets people apart in getting the job versus someone who doesn't get the job, because a lot of these jobs, there's hundreds or thousands of applicants, it's often their ability to work in groups, their ability to get along with their coworkers, their ability to handle stress or adversity or disappointment. And as someone who used to work in the technical field, and I was part of the hiring team for many positions, these are the sorts of things that I would often look for. And so those are some of the keys to emotional intelligence. And another one that, I don't know that there's a lot of awareness around, but one of them is the ability to stay present. Okay, and you might be thinking, well, what's that all about? But what happens is when we get emotionally activated over kind of what we can handle. Okay, so as a therapist or in this field, we call it emotional regulation. So when we're able to keep our emotions, the energy of what we're feeling, within a certain range, we don't become overwhelmed. It actually becomes a strength of ours. We can speak with passion. We can um, connect with people when we're in that emotional place. So it's actually a benefit. But what happens for a lot of people, right? And a lot of my clients, this is one of the big things that I help them learn to do, and it is something you can learn to do, is to keep their emotions from overwhelming them. Okay, so we call this emotional regulation. And I think that's a big part of emotional intelligence because what happens is when we are really activated, we're really triggered emotionally. We're upset, we're fighting, we're yelling, there's a lot of parts of our brain, and Daniel Siegel, his work is where I kind of learned and really started to appreciate how big the impact is. But I really learned that so many circuits of our brain actually shut off when we're triggered. Okay. So we literally cannot think in the same way. We can't, we go into kind of what's often called the survival part of our brain. So we can't reason. We can't think of the future. We can't project, what we're doing right now, how that might impact the future. We can't delay gratification. So that's kind of one way of saying it is we can't think about, oh, well, if I do this right now, how might it impact me in the future? That's we sit down on the couch and we eat the whole bag of Oreos or whatever it is. Um, we also can't consider other people's feelings or the impact that what we're doing might have on them. Okay, so and there's more of our circuits that get shut off, but those are two of the big ones. We can't be in relationship. We can't be understanding. We can't find a compromise in a healthy way, right? Like a win-win situation when we are emotionally activated, when we're triggered. And so this is where I think a big part is, even in these highly cognitive or mental fields, if we're always emotionally activated and triggered in an extreme way, we're not even going to be able to think. So it's actually going to be detrimental, even for those of us that don't necessarily have that much of human to human interaction. Even if we're, triggered and not able to regulate our emotions, that's still going to impact our ability to think clearly. So it's a big thing. Not to mention how our personal lives suffer. So much of our personal happiness, our personal life satisfaction is derived from relationships. And so this is a huge thing. And I think there's been a huge change in the way that we approach this in our society in general, right? I'm in Canada. I'm speaking from kind of a North American perspective, but I think it's true in many countries. We are trying to find this new way of being, not just necessarily based on the mind, but based on the whole experience of what it is to be, a person and in the world and in relationships. So parents that have kids with high emotional intelligence, silence. Thing they did is that they understood the power of silence. Okay. And I think there's many important aspects to this. And one of them is, I think, to let our kids figure things out on their own. When I think a lot of us parents, and I do this too as a parent, more often than I'd like to admit. I know better, so to speak. I know the science. I know how this works, and I still find myself, filling that space. But that silence gives them a chance to figure things out for themselves. It's one thing to tell somebody how to do something or what to do or how to think. That's a big one we do with our kids, is we tell them how to think. But it doesn't give them a chance to figure out how to think them for themselves. And so silence, when we're not just filling that silence, they have some space to do that. And we're indicating, we're letting them know that, hey, it's okay if you don't have the answer right away. It's okay for us to just sit here and be still. Another aspect of this is, so much of our time with technology now and just the busyness of our lives, how often do we just get to sit and be? Daydream. Daydreaming is actually a time, I think it's important. I've never had um, videos or movies or anything in the car. So when we're on a trip, my son spends a lot of time daydreaming. And I think it's important because it's actually a time when our subconscious mind is processing things. Okay. So we're not necessarily consciously aware of a lot of it, but it's processing things that we've experienced. It's kind of interpreting in some sense what we have experienced, leading up to that time. So that time of silence where there's not stimulus of some kind. There's not something to do. There's not something to be talking. Just filling the space with maybe something that is unnecessary. It allows that time for them to process. And I think it also teaches kids. It opens the space to what we often in society called mindfulness. This thing that we can do by stepping back and just becoming aware of our own experience, aware of our thoughts, aware of how we're feeling, aware of, maybe how something has been upsetting for us, something somebody said, or, we can just take a step back. And it's not about spending a lot of time necessarily, like brooding and all of that sort of thing, but just enough time to kind of like have a little bit of awareness around it, bit of space. Okay. And one of the real struggles as a parent, I see this in my own experience with my son, is when he's upset, especially if I've done something and it's triggered his upset. I feel personally responsible. Maybe I feel a little guilty because, oh yeah, you know what? I did lose my temper a bit. I did raise my voice, or I said something that was maybe not as considerate as I normally would like to be with him. And then he gets upset. And when he was really young, I think it was healthy for him to go and have me be there with him. He needed that closeness. But as he's gotten older, right? He's a preteen now. I've seen that often needs space to himself. So he'll go to his room and he's upset, and he often lies on his bed, um, and I often go in and say, "Hey, do you want to talk about it?" And usually the answer these days is no. And so sometimes I'll just sit there in silence with him. And this allows him to know that I'm there, but that he doesn't have to make sense of everything that's happened for him. That it's okay that he doesn't have the answers, he can't explain it because he's in that emotional turmoil, and his nervous system needs to calm down, right? He's not emotionally regulated in that moment. And by me forcing to talk about it, which sometimes is because of what I feel like I need, I need to feel better. I need to make it better with him. Um, he can start to learn to regulate himself, bring his emotions down. And by me being close to him, and now that he's a bit older, I'm in the other room. I'm not necessarily sitting with him, but when he was a bit younger, I would often just sit on the side of his bed and say nothing. Um, and that would often trigger my anxiety. That was one of the reasons that I often was wanting to talk, to do something with my own discomfort. But by giving him that silence, it's like giving him permission just to be with himself, just to take the time he needs to sort himself out. And if he doesn't know how to sort himself out, then one of the big things that parents can do is help their kids co regulate. Even just by sitting next to them, there is an exchange of safety, a feeling of like, I'm not alone. If I need to talk, mom or dad or whoever is right there, but I don't need to perform. I think silence and the honoring of silence is something that we're really missing in society. And often, like I've said, a huge part of not allowing or not creating that space of silence is because of, our own anxiety as parents. I struggle with that, um, still often, especially if the upset is within a conversation that I've had with my son. So I hope that, there's probably a lot more that I could say about silence, but I don't want to make this video too long. And I'd love to hear, moments that you've shared or allowed, created space for silence in your relationships, especially with your kids. And I'll talk about the next point in the next video.